Immigration, the economy, abortion, and masculinity. I'm Michael Smerconish in Philadelphia. It's Labor Day weekend. Usually this marks the start of the final dash toward Election Day. But of course, we haven't stopped sprinting all summer long. Despite all the effort and expenditures by the candidates and their campaigns, the presidential election is neck and neck. Several polls were released at the end of this week, and they all tell a similar story. A new USA Today Suffolk poll shows Vice President Harris ahead of former President Trump nationally, 48-43. Big shifts from Hispanic, Black, and young voters are helping Harris, but the biggest change came from lower-income voters. They supported Donald Trump over Joe Biden by 3 percentage points back in June. Harris now leading in that demographic, 58-35%, casting a 23-point advantage. Then there's a new Wall Street Journal poll, which also shows Harris with a narrow lead over Trump, 48-47. That's in a head-to-head matchup. The national polls are interesting, but of course, presidents get elected in the Electoral College, so all eyes remain on 7 battleground states. Bloomberg News and Morning Consult have Harris leading in 6 of the 7 battleground states, a tie with Trump in Arizona. Harris's largest margin is in the state of Wisconsin, where she leads by 8. The Harris campaign clearly has the momentum, but many of these polls, they fall within the margin of error. Nevertheless, because of the advantage Republicans enjoy in the Electoral College, polling guru Nate Silver's forecast predicts that it's Donald Trump who has a 52.4% chance of winning the Electoral College compared to Harris's 47.3%. Back in 2020, Silver's forecast model predicted at about Labor Day weekend that Biden had a 71% chance of beating Trump. Then again in 2016, he gave Hillary Clinton essentially the same odds. The gender divide that's reflected in the candidates themselves is mirrored in polling among young Americans. Writing for the New York Times this week, Claire Kane Miller observed the following, quote, "In some ways, this presidential election has become a referendum on gender roles, and the generation with the biggest difference in opinion between male and female voters is Generation Z. On one side are young women who as a group are very liberal. They've been politically galvanized by gender bombshells like #MeToo, the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and the candidacy of Vice President Kamala Harris. On the other are young men, some of whom feel that rapidly changing gender roles have left them behind socially and economically, and see former President Donald J. Trump as a champion of traditional manhood." A recent New York Times Siena College poll finds young voters have the greatest gender divide compared to every other age group. It's 51 points. In other words, men between the ages of 18 and 29, they favor former President Trump over Vice President Harris by 13 points. Women in the same age group are choosing Harris over Trump by 38 points. Since women started entering the workforce, pursuing higher education in larger numbers in the 70s, young women today are making strides in economic equality, earning more college degrees than men, and serving more often as their family's primary breadwinner. Men, on the other hand, are working less. Many are living without a spouse or a partner. A Pew study found less than a fifth of Americans believe that the progress women have made in society came at the expense of men. But 40% of men supporting Trump between the ages of 18 and 49 do believe the progress of women came at their expense. And Trump has been trying to reach out to this demographic, doing podcasts and golfing with the Nelk Boys, joking around with Theo Von, appearing on YouTube with Jake and Logan Paul, as well as with streamers like Aiden Ross, reaching the millions of young men who follow these social media personalities. As the New York Times put it, these repeated collisions of testosterone-fueled orbits are a campaign strategy, not a coincidence. Look, that our young men today are struggling in comparison to young women, it's borne out in the data, raising the question of whether it's time for a targeted intervention. Consider that at the Democratic Party website, there's a list under the heading, Who We Serve, of 16 different demographic groups. They include African Americans, the faith community, LGBTQ+ community, rural Americans, and women, but not men. Which brings me to today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Are policy solutions necessary to address the plight of young men who are underperforming in schools and leading unhealthier lives than young women? Go vote. Joining me now is NYU Business School professor Scott Galloway, host of the podcast Prof G. Scott, of course, has been at the forefront of discussions about the plight of young men who feel forgotten. Great to have you back. That Claire Kane Miller piece in the New York Times, I thought really interesting because the men in this category whom she interviewed, she said they're not misogynist. They're more focused on the economy and what they perceive to be their lack of economic opportunity. Will you speak to that issue?
Great to see you, Michael. Yeah, it's interesting. It would be incorrect to assume that it's men who want to go back to the past and are some way. This isn't thinly veiled misogyny. As a matter of fact, among Gen Z and millennial men, they're very supportive of gender equality. So it's not that they're moving towards the Republican Party. They feel abandoned by the Democratic Party. And that is, if you have a group, the Democratic Party right now, Michael, is facing the same issues as some of the DEI apparatus at universities. And that is when you are purposely and explicitly advocating for 76% of the population, are you advocating for them or are you discriminating against the 24%? And that's how I think a lot of young men feel. Quite frankly, they just don't feel seen by the Democratic Party. To the issue of economics, you reference college, where pretty soon with these trends, we're going to have 2-to-1 female to male college grads. Women in urban areas under the age of 30 are now making more money than men. More single women own homes than men. And by the way, those are wonderful things. And most men don't resent that. But what they see is a huge apparatus and resources and rhetoric and very inspiring speeches about the importance of advocating for every single group but young men.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a popular position to carry that flag. And I want to show you something. I'll read it aloud in case you don't have return. There was a headline in the New York Times, Trump courts the Maniverse. There it is. Big story, well done story. And I took a look, Scott, at some of the comments, and this one caught my eye because it was typical. Put that up on the screen, Catherine. So this person said, that headline says it all. A bunch of bros with fake jobs, preaching to a bunch of bros with no jobs, being courted by a tiny man who has never held a job that he was qualified for. And I could read you 10 like that, more than 10 like that. And I think that's part of the reason why, there's this mindset out there like, screw these guys, they don't need assistance. Many of them are young white men. They've been privileged to begin with. What would you say to those who aren't showing the sympathy for the demographic we're talking about?
It's simple. Should a 19-year-old who has fewer opportunities educationally, fewer opportunities professionally, what happened to wood, metal, and auto shop? You have an education system that's highly biased against them. Boys are twice as likely on a behavior-adjusted basis to be suspended as girls. Think about what we want in education. We want someone who's organized, who's a pleaser, who sits down, who's not disruptive. You basically describe a girl. So the question is, do we believe empathy is a zero-sum game? And that is, gay marriage didn't hurt heteronormative marriage. Civil rights didn't hurt white people. And should a 19-year-old with fewer economic and romantic opportunities pay the price for the privilege that you and me enjoyed, Michael? That's the key question. Is it time for them to pay back the wrongs of the past? Or do we, in fact, decide that we cannot have a society that flourishes, women cannot flourish, when men are floundering? So the notion that somehow this group who is committing suicide, can you imagine any group, Michael, that was killing themselves at 4 times the rate of the control group and it not being a discussion? How many times did we hear about breaking the glass ceiling and that who's going to tell President Trump that that job he's seeking might be a black job? Those are inspiring, righteous words. Did anybody on stage at the Democratic convention mention the very real issues young men are facing? And this is the opportunity. This is a battle. It was supposed to be a battle over a new form of kind of liberating women. We thought that was going to be the defining issue in this campaign, bodily autonomy. It's turning into masculinity and different visions of masculinity. And there's a huge opportunity here because while Trump has embraced the manosphere, Walz, to the Democrats' credit, is portraying a form of masculinity more around protection and service. And that is a wonderful definition of masculinity. And that is the opportunity for Democrats. First, they have to acknowledge the problem. Young men have fallen faster than any demographic in America over the last 40 years, and to embrace a more modern form of masculinity and to lean into it.
Catherine, will you put back on the screen the DNC portion of the website that I referenced earlier that shows the 16 demographic groups? Because I want to ask Scott, should young men be on the list with Latinos, ethnic Americans, Native Americans, rural Americans, seniors, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, do we need, it's my poll question today, do we need a targeted approach, a policy approach by both parties to address the situation that you've given a platform?
I personally think, quite frankly, I think that list is one thing. I think it's stupid. I think when you say we're advocating for basically everybody but one group, you aren't advocating for those special interest groups. You're discriminating against one. It should be about freedom. It should be about opportunity for the middle class. It should be about lifting up our young people. I don't think you want, specific programs that target young men, I think are just too politically charged. But for example, the Democrats don't take credit where they should. 70% of the jobs created by the Infrastructure Act are going to be for men who don't necessarily have college degrees, but they don't want to talk about it. So I think we need to move away from, quite frankly, the politics of identity to the politics of America. The same is true at universities. I don't think the University of California in 1997 did away with race-based affirmative action and went to income-based or adversity-based affirmative action. I think that's a role for the Democratic Party. Instead of calling out specific observable traits and say, we're promoting this group and this group and this group, but not this one, move to, okay, young people are 24% less wealthy than they were 40 years ago versus plus 70-year-olds are 72% wealthier. Young families are struggling. 3 million men between the age of 25 and 34 are no longer even seeking employment. 1 out of 3 young men doesn't have a girlfriend. 2 out of 3 young women under the age of 30 do have a girlfriend because they're dating older for more economically and emotionally viable men. So we need programs that lift up all young people. But we need to move away from this identity politics because it's not about promoting or advocating. It's turned into reverse discrimination.
When you do this, and I mean this with the highest praise, I have to go back and watch the tape because you just hit me with so much good data that I want to write it all down. Put up on the screen the social media reaction because I might want to lean on Scott for the response before he leaves us. Here it is. Sounds like more coddling of fragile male egos and a form of affirmative action. See, this is typical, Scott. This is just like all those comments in the New York Times. Quote, maybe if boys and young men spent more time studying and less time bullying others, gaming or trying to get laid, they'd be better educated. And you would say what?
Replace the term young men with blacks or gays or women and see the reaction you would get from a statement like that. Again, we're not going to have a productive society if young men aren't engaging with school, they're not engaging with work, and they're not engaging with women. The whole shooting match is that America is a platform such that people can get together and form loving, deep, and meaningful relationships. That is why you have an economy, to create a middle class such that young people can build nice lives. And one of the keys to building a productive life is the ability to find a partner. And the reality is we don't talk about kind of the core issue here, and it's mating. And that is women mate socioeconomically horizontally and up, men horizontal and down. And when the pool of horizontal and up keeps shrinking, young people aren't connecting. How many times have you heard people say, I know wonderful women, and they can't find a man? Sure, they can find a man. They just can't find a man they want. So you know who wants more economically and emotionally viable men? Women. Ask any mother who has 2 girls and 1 boy. It's time to lift up young people. Empathy is not a zero-sum game.
You're the best. Thank you for being here as always.